And good afternoon, everybody. And on behalf of the Local Buy team, I would like to welcome you all to the pre-tender briefing on ICT Solutions, Products, Services and New Technologies, LB308. The aim of today is that you leave this webinar with an understanding of the specs for this arrangement. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end. However, you're more than welcome to type your questions in the chat section. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. So taking you through the presentation today will be your category manager for this arrangement, Dan O'Donnell, and the customer relationship managers, which is my colleague Audrey Dobell and myself, Liz McFarlane. Our details you can see on the screen. However, you can also find these details on localbuy.net.au. So why are you here today? The Local Buy pre-tender briefing is to provide you, a current or potential supplier, an outline of the arrangement and the streamlined process of becoming a pre-qualified supplier on a Local Buy arrangement. So some of the things we'll go through: who is Local Buy, what is a pre-qualified arrangement, and why are our arrangements important. An outline of the categories, including term of contract, the platforms we use for you to respond to this tender, key things you need to remember when applying for a Local Buy tender, and of course, where you can go to for help and support. Local Buy was established in 2001 by the Local Government Association of Queensland, or LGAQ, to meet the needs of local government with the procurement process. Our arrangements enable councils and government authorities to purchase a broad range of products and services from pre-qualified suppliers or preferred suppliers like yourselves without needing to undertake a full tender process or multiple quotes. We are a profit for purpose organisation, which means all profits are returned to our parent company, LGAQ. Our arrangements are an exception under Section 234 of the Local Government Regulations for purchases of any time. Sorry, I was reading your question there, Daniel. I was going to answer that at the end, but yes, this will actually replace that contract, sorry. So Local Buy is establishing a register of pre-qualified suppliers. It's a local government association arrangement for the provision of ICT products, services and new technologies, LB308, which will replace the previous arrangement. This will assist purchasers in managing their individual requirements. So the intent of this new LGA arrangement is to provide councils and other purchasers in Queensland, Northern Territory and Tasmania with easy access to suppliers of these services, providing effective and streamlined procurement process whilst maintaining transparency and probity throughout. So this Local Buy LGA arrangement can be accessed by the following organisations. So of course, all 77 Queensland councils, the Regional Organisation of Councils, government-owned corporations, state government departments, agencies and statutory authorities, water and ports authorities, charities and not-for-profit organisations, universities and schools, the Northern Territory and Tasmanian councils, and large privately owned corporate entities who have been approved to use this contract. I will now hand over to my colleague, Dan O'Donnell, who's the category manager for this arrangement, and Dan will take you through the more finer details of the arrangement.
So the ICT arrangement LB308 will, once it takes effect from the 1st of November, actually I'll take a step back. I saw a couple of questions pop up. So this panel will incorporate services currently provided under BUS 274, the ICT panel, and also the NPN 2.18, the Smart Cities Technologies panel. It's not simply a replacement like for like, it is a panel incorporating the services from the two existing panels, in addition to some enhanced categories and also some new additional categories. The current term for both the BUS 274, that's been in existence, I think, for approximately 3 years, and also the Smart Cities panel, those two panels will be coming to an end at the end of October, and on the 1st of November, the new Arrangement LB308 will be taking effect. It will be in effect in place for up to 9 years. Essentially, the first term will be for initial 3 years, and with the availability of an additional 6 years that may be extended in one 6-year period or two 3-year periods. So effectively, full extension will take us through for the 9 years. So the categories under the arrangement, for the current suppliers, you'll see an additional 6 or 7 categories under the arrangement, and see that a number of the existing categories will be broken up. So the hardware arrangement will essentially remain the same or similar, whereas the software and licensing category will be broken up into 2 categories: a traditional software and licensing that will incorporate things from applications and programs that enable you to perform certain specific tasks on your computer, on-premises, off-the-shelf software, volume licensing, insights and finance software, etc. Whereas you'll see an additional category for Microsoft software and licensing, or the on-selling of Microsoft software and licensing. You'll also see changes to the existing software category under BUS 274, which will also see virtual and cloud technology be moved away from the software category where it currently is, and we'll see individual categories for software as a solution, infrastructure as a service, a platform as a service. Part of the logic behind this was based on the feedback that we received from stakeholders, both internal and external stakeholders being councils and other customers and the not-for-profit state government entities, but also some of the suppliers as well. The motivation behind not only the virtual categories, but also the new categories and the structure for these is to, I suppose, in a way, deal with the disconnect between what customers want and potentially what the suppliers can provide. A lot of our customers within councils, within government departments, non-for-profits or public utility providers, or whatever they may be, aren't always in the central procurement areas. They're not always in, ISB branches, for example. They're in business areas and projects that mightn't have a strong technical background. And by splitting a lot of the categories, it makes it a whole lot easier for them to potentially identify the services which they could obtain from the panel, and essentially increase the number of contracts executed through this panel arrangement. We also have some additional categories as well in compliance, enforcement monitoring and utilities management, and compliance enforcement monitoring, transport and vehicles. These categories have been created to kind of identify those niche local government compliance services. And going back to my previous point, a lot of people in compliance and enforcement or national heavy vehicle regulation compliance with fleets and whatnot, some people in these areas mightn't necessarily look straight to a software category or a bespoke solution. Whereas by seeing the keywords under the compliance and enforcement categories, we believe will better allow them to identify once again what they need and potentially what the suppliers such as yourselves can also deliver. We also have 2 other additional categories dealing with the niche areas of digital health, medical, including aged care, and also education and childcare related IT. These are particularly targeted at the not-for-profit entities that are eligible to use our panel arrangements, not just ICT, but also other panel arrangements. This may include entities such as Mater Hospitals, Anglicare, Uniting Care in the digital health field, but also a lot of religious organisations and orders and Catholic education, for example, or the Edmund Rice Foundation that manage schools, I think, such as the St. Lawrence's, the St. Edmunds, and places in Intricately, Ambrose Tracy, that they would be eligible customers to potentially, or may have a need for services under the education and childcare categories. We've also included the emerging technologies category as well. I think everybody in the audience today, or the virtual audience, would know that unlike areas such as the supply of bitumen products, the ICT industry is moving forward at 1 million miles an hour. Cloud technology that might have been state of the art 12 or 18 months ago is now out of date and antiquated potentially. So the emerging technologies category will be targeting areas of AI technologies, blockchain, the Internet of Things. Whereas I think some of the other categories are a bit more self-explanatory, and I think another question popped up: will we be providing these slides? And yes, we will. And then obviously, when the specifications are released on the 1st of August, you will get a great deal more information regarding the categories and subcategories associated under the new panel. If we can just move forward to the next slide. So the current suppliers would be quite familiar with the general conditions of contract. And once again, when we have, I guess, an audience of current and potential new suppliers, there will be some overlap. So I do apologise for that, but I'll just quickly run through this. And once again, the details relating to the general conditions of contract and the framework balancing the competing rights, interests and obligations will be articulated in more detail when the specs are released on the 1st of August. And I think essentially the key elements or the key items there are self-explanatory at a high level. Now, with pricing, I guess with the ICT panel as opposed to other categories, I understand that there's a level of complexities and also, applying a bit of common sense for someone that's potentially developing a bespoke bespoke solution, or a cybersecurity framework or whatever it might be for a client, the ability to provide pricing on that. I understand that it's not an off-the-shelf catalog type thing. However, where practical, it's essential that pricing is provided as part of your response. Unlike the current arrangements or suppliers that are currently on BUS 274, you'll be receiving a different, more user-friendly and practical pricing schedule that will allow you, or make it easy for you to identify where to provide pricing on where it's relevant, but also for those with the different categories that have catalogs of pricing information, there will be an opportunity and an option for you to provide those as well. And I don't want to read the slides off verbatim, but essentially, you are to provide your competitive pricing. It's essentially it's essentially cap pricing, but there's nothing stopping yourselves and a customer, whether it's a council, non-for-profit, or a state government department, or whatever it might be, to essentially negotiate down. Yes, obviously, all prices submitted in Australian dollars and GST inclusive, and the pricing is to be current for the initial 3-month period. throughout the life of this agreement, just like with BUS 274 and current suppliers on the Smart Cities Technology panel as well, there is an opportunity throughout the life of the contract to essentially provide local buy with, you know, revised pricing schedules. Yes. Sorry, I just saw a question pop up where essentially two, you know, solutions may not be identical, and yes, that is the case. Pricing under this arrangement is a bit different to the other arrangements in that it's impossible. Sometimes with some solutions they're not identical, so you know it's not going to be accurate or indicative at the very least. However, for software, for hardware, you know, off the shelf, well, then it is expected that pricing is provided. Yes, the pricing submitted is to be the maximum price, and like in any other panel arrangement, there's nothing stopping a supplier and a customer to essentially negotiate down on that. Alrighty, three key elements that are compulsory as part, mandatory requirements to respond to are quality assurance, workplace health and safety, and environmental. As the slide suggests, certification by a qualified third party, whether it's you know, ISO or the Australian New Zealand standards, are highly desirable. However, we also accept internal policies that demonstrate how you may comply with these requirements, or for sole operators, for example, or independent sole operators that mightn't have formal policies or ISO certificates. It's about demonstrating what you do within your particular organisation or particular business in response to the key areas of quality assurance, workplace health and safety, and environment. The current suppliers in the audience today will notice that there's a difference in the minimum insurance levels, where we've adjusted them to be a bit more, I guess, practical and flexible with regard to the varying products and services that suppliers such as yourselves would be able to provide under this panel arrangement. So public liability is now down to $10 million. Professional indemnity insurance is down to $1 million per event, and product liability insurance is now down to $10 million. Okay, the current suppliers will be aware of, I guess, the fee structure under the local buy arrangements. For new suppliers in the audience, we have a verification fee. This is set up below, but also in the schedule of the terms and conditions, it's also available there. There's an initial $500 verification fee payable on the commencement date for new suppliers. So everybody responding on the 1st of August will be essentially payable on the 1st of November. It's $250 payable for existing local buy suppliers. And then for each year, there's an annual verification fee, which is payable annually by all suppliers. There is a verification, sorry, I'm a bit tongue-tied. There's a verification fee exemption, and there's a eligibility process for that. In order to be eligible, an entity has less than 12 full-time equivalent staff, less than $2 million in turnover, is a registered charity, or is an Indigenous organisation. No, sorry, I've got a question on the screen. The $500 fee is a $250 fee for the current suppliers. The current suppliers would also be aware of the contract management fee, which is 1.5%, which is current on the BUS 274, the ICT panel, and also the Smart Cities panel. However, one subtle change with the new LB308 moving forward is that it will be 1.5% on all categories except the category for Microsoft licensing and hardware, which is 0.75%. I've got a question on the board with, sorry, it's gone.
So, Tony, we might get to that at the end,
Yeah.
and we'll have a look at that, but I think that was a question on the verification fee, which we will address at the end.
Sorry, if we can just jump to the next slide.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. So, first step, registering vendor panel. So, vendor panel is an online electronic request for quote system, which is accessible through local buy by both the supplier and purchasers. If you're not already registered in vendor panel, please go to vendorpanel.com.au, and that's completely free of charge. Once you've registered, you'll then appear in vendor panel marketplace, but it's really important to understand that marketplace is not pre-qualified when it comes to suppliers. While some of your businesses may be listed on marketplace, unless your businesses engage under the local buy arrangement numbers, buyers are not covered by the terms and conditions of the local buy contract, or is there legislative exemption. Why do we use vendor panel? Well, there's various platforms available for this e-procurement, but you are required to be registered within vendor panel to receive notifications of when local buy releases tenders. You will also receive notifications from councils when they wish to purchase from you under a local buy arrangement. APET 360. So if you go into your search bar and type in 360providers.apetsoftware.com.au, you'll be greeted with the above screen. So if you're already registered, you can hit the top right-hand button, which says sign in, or if you're not already registered, select the sign up and complete the required information. This is also completely free to register. So I'd recommend registering in APET 360 if you're not already, and that'll just help you with that little sort of process so that you're ready to roll on the 1st of August. We're going to be holding separate APET 360 webinars in the coming weeks, where we'll cover off how to apply for the tenders, examples of the questions, etc., that you'll be asked. Now, for up-to-date webinars, please keep eye on localbuyactive.com.au. There's a little part in there for events. You'll actually see the webinars that are coming up. Ready, set, go. So just to give you a bit of an idea with the timeline, and what you can do now is make sure your business is registered in vendor panel. So once again, vendor panel marketplace, okay, not a pre-qualified list of suppliers. You won't be pre-qualified until you go through a full tender process and are accepted. And of course, sign up to APET 360 if you're not already signed up. Once we reach the first day of the month of the tender opening, in this case 1st of August, you'll then be able to go onto APET 360 and commence your tender for this arrangement. Tenders will then close on the last day of August at 2 p.m. Brisbane time. There will be no extensions to this time for late submissions whatsoever. Then in the month of September, your submission will be evaluated, and then appointment notifications will be sent out during the following month, which is October. Keep an eye out on your emails. So once you've started the tender process, you'll notice here with this little screen dump here that you will get notifications from notifications at APET software. So whether it be an addendum issued, whether it be password recovery, and of course, general notifications will come through this.
This is particularly important if we end up sending a clarification or require further information on a response. And there is I guess, a time limit to respond to those questions. So it's important that the emails, well, one identifies, we check that it doesn't go through to your junk file, or potentially have your email registered to a shared email folder, so the team responding to the procurement process will ensure that the email is received.
So what do you need to remember? Give yourself enough time to complete the tender. So you may update your submission at any time. So even if you have completed your tender submission, you can go in, open it up and do the changes that are necessary. However, in the last day of the month at 2 p.m. Brisbane time, the tendering system, which is APET 360, will be closed. Keep an eye out for emails through notifications at APET software, as well as your junk email box. All questions must, I repeat, must go through the APET 360 forum, which will in turn be responded to by our category manager, Dan O'Donnell. During the tender process, from start to finish, in other words, from the opening of the tender until you're appointed, you must not make any contact directly with your category manager, Dan in this case. This is to ensure that Local Buy continues to maintain the highest level of probity. So if during this time you must speak to a representative from Local Buy, please reach out to Audrey or myself, or even the inquiries line. APET 360 will only open on the first day of the arrangement cycle where you can view the tender. So once again, you can register now. You will not, however, be able to view any Local Buy tenders until the first day of that arrangement at 2 a.m. in the morning. So if you have trouble sleeping, jump on 1st of August, 2 a.m. and you'll see the Local Buy tenders. So complete all the questions in full and supply all supporting documents as identified. Refer to our websites, localbuy.net.au and LocalBuy Active, or our social media for regular updates via LinkedIn and Facebook. And don't forget, we are here to help you, so please reach out to Audrey and myself if you have any queries. Question time.
Thanks. So, do you want to jump into the chat and have a look at the question?
Yeah.
I saw one pop up regarding the date or the duration of the time for suppliers to be able to respond. As Liz has suggested, if you're up at 2 in the morning, you'll be able to access the tender documents from 1st of August, and you'll have the ability to respond until 2 p.m. on the 31st of August. So it's the month of August to respond.
Elliot, what happens to contracts commenced under BUS 274 if you do not apply to the new arrangements? Well, BUS 274 will cease to exist and that arrangement will terminate on its due date.
However, if an agreement or a contract was executed with a council or a customer before this date, the terms and the conditions at the time of your agreement being placed continues for the life of their contract. So if it was for the development for an end-to-end software solution that was going to be built for the next 12 or 18 months, the terms and conditions under BUS 274 will be in place for the duration of your agreement with the council or customer or whoever it might be.
Luke, I don't quite understand your question. Where is all the APET 3 data held? Sorry.
I can jump into that. It's all offshore. Oh, sorry, it's all onshore. I've got to get that word right. It is protected securely within Australia.
Okay, another question here. How long will the tender be open for? From the 1st of the month till the last day of the month. So whether that be, depending on the month, 30 days, 31 days.
31st of August.
APET 360 is so user-friendly.
There we go. There's just one there, just about the verification fee.
So what is actually being verified in the annual supplier verification process? So we have a third party verify such things as insurances, various compliances, and make sure that is looked at annually.
And also financial viability assessments and whatnot.
Doug, current contract stipulates liability limits to be a maximum of 3 times contract value. Has this been reviewed along with the insurance cover requirements?
Yeah, as we had touched on before, and part of the review when any panel arrangements coming to an end, we consider feedback internally and externally, and in consideration of that, as we touched on before, the insurances have been reviewed, and just to go over it again, once again, the public liability insurance is now $10 million. The professional indemnity insurance is now $1 million per event. Product liability insurance is $10 million, only when supplying goods. So hopefully that answers the question there.
Can local buy give an indication of the contract value ceiling for this arrangement? Not 100% sure what you mean by that. If it means we can't actually set the ceiling prices for the supplier, I'm not too sure if that's what you mean, or whether you mean contract in its totality, what it generates. Who is that third party? Jackie, I'm unsure of who that is. If you would like to send that question through me via email, I'm unclear whether that is something that we are able to share, but I can certainly refer that to our legal department. Is it possible to get our old data response from APEP 360? Not at this stage. Mike, will current business details and pre-provided information flow through the new tender responses?
No, unfortunately not. It's a whole new tender process, and unfortunately, even though as a supplier you may have went through this process where just potentially the time in your life you don't get back, unfortunately we'll have to get you to resubmit that information again.
Is there a maximum value for contracts offered under this arrangement? No, there is not.
No, there's not, no.
Alison, did this question get answered? And I'm trying to find where your original question was. Okay, Alison, if I can just get you to resubmit that, my apologies, I can't see that at the moment. Doug, thanks. To be clearer, I understand the insurances have been addressed, but specifically the liability limit is set at a minimum of 3 times currently. Is this being reviewed?
In short, yes.
Alison, it was Owen's question about the $500 invoice. So I'm thinking that, oh, here we go. Not for current suppliers, it's not, it is 250. How can we encourage councils to use this panel rather than running their own tender?
I'm happy to answer that if you like. Look, at the end of the day, I think in encouraging councils and non-for-profits and also state government departments to use this panel, Local Buy has a vested interest in this. We also have a responsibility to ensure that we deal with the disconnect between what councils want or the perception of what they think that they need. And at the end of the day, it's ensuring that you, the suppliers, can actually educate them on ensuring what they want is what they need. We use a variety of, I guess, platforms or activities to manage that disconnect. We, as individually, as the category managers, we work closely with councils and also in educating them on a variety of different levels about what they can and what they can't access when things pop up. We also have Liz and Audrey that essentially like gypsies in a caravan going around to all our councils and customers to maintain open lines of communication with them, see what's coming up, see where the different category managers and the different panels can provide solutions. At different stages throughout the year, we also engage with suppliers, whether it be in webinars or obviously COVID's made it a bit hard for forums. We also work closely with representative bodies. One example is that with ICT products and services, there's a lot of overlap with the engineering field as well. So representatives from local body have a close relationship with the engineering representative body. I mispronounced the acronym, IPWEA, where once again, it's getting access to the key people at a variety of different levels, not only in rep bodies, but also councils at a variety of different levels, right from the business areas at the bottom up to the CEOs, the CFOs, and also the councillors at different forums. For example, it might be the Local Government Association, Queensland conferences. We also constantly are sending out high-level materials, some would call it brochureware, out to the councils and customers to let them know what suppliers can do. Councils are always, and other customers are always interested in good news stories that you, the suppliers, have done. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly with Queensland, Tasmania and Northern Territory councils. It could be something that you've done in different Australian states and territories, either in the private or the public sector, or potentially in other countries, New Zealand or whatever it might be. It's all about educating the customers.
Mike, what percentage of spend from Queensland not-for-profits, local government authorities and state government runs through local buy historically or currently?
It varies widely depending on the different arrangements. My arrangement, for example, is the current ICT arrangement. We have, and it's publicly available information, we have a lot of state government customers, from Department of Transport and Main Roads to Department of Health, Department of Education, some of the utility providers, the public utility providers as well, and across at different arrangements at different times over the life of them. We have had, and I mentioned a few of them before, customers in the non-for-profits from, I guess, in one end of town, like Mud Hospitals, Anglicare, Uniting Care, Churches of Christ, right down to smaller entities that literally run on a shoestring budget, like domestic violence shelters, whatever it might be. So the customers that utilize our arrangements are wide and varied, like the size and scale of the councils alone. At the big end of town, you've got councils like Brisbane City Council that has a greater budget and greater asset base than the state government of Tasmania. It has more staff than the state government of Tasmania, and then you have the smaller Indigenous councils up in far north Queensland and the Cape. So there's a wide variety of needs, not only with councils but also with the not-for-profits, and there is a significant utilisation of our arrangements. Not only within state and local governments, but also within the not-for-profit sectors as well. Strangely, with quirks in legislation, entities such as the Brisbane Airport Corporation are also eligible customers as well.
David, you seem to recall a fee per contract with previous arrangements you've run through local buy. Is there some commission fee charged by a local buy for each contract? So the contract management percentage that we referred to is 1.5% on all categories, except for the Microsoft licensing and hardware, which is 0.75%.
And that's essentially on all invoices issued under services provided through the panel.
Tony, previously Victorian local government organisations were covered under the arrangements. Am I correct in understanding that Victoria will no longer be included under the new arrangement? So MAV in Victoria on this particular arrangement moving forward is not a party to this arrangement.
MAV will continue under the existing Smart Cities arrangement 2.18 alone. I believe that the current term for that is until late next year with a potential option to extend. So I guess from the suppliers on the Smart Cities panel currently, there is, beyond the 31st of October, there will be some duplication where potentially you could be providing services to councils in Victoria under Smart Cities, but also the same or similar services under Local Buy Panel 308 for Queensland, Tasmania and Northern Territory.
Beverly, you're on multiple panels with Local Buy and see very few, if any, opportunities to provide services as a result. How can that be improved? Beverly, if you haven't already reached out to either Audrey or myself, please reach out, or the category manager. We can certainly have a chat to you to just make sure that you've explored all opportunities available, and we welcome that call. Lucinda, is the new panel open to acquire new suppliers once the tender is closed and allow existing suppliers to update their capacity category?
Yes, so as part of this arrangement, there will be an opportunity for new suppliers to come on in the similar fashion to existing Local Buy panels under the active arrangement process, which is once a quarter. This also presents an opportunity for, as you alluded to, suppliers where their products or services might change. So, for example, a simple example might be where someone's currently or applies to come onto the panel to provide software solutions, but then either through acquisition or broadening the products and services they provide might come a hardware supplier or want to provide consultancy services. In addition to that, if you wish to provide different services to what you have tendered for initially, the quarterly process allows you to add those additional products or services as part of, I guess, your catalogue of services under the panel.
And Jackie would like us to revisit the pricing item. How do they apply if they cannot provide applicable pricing?
For that, and there are a number of categories potentially on the panel. If you can't practically provide the pricing, well then, you don't. And I think someone alluded to on the comments before, where if you're providing, a SaaS solution or a bespoke solution where, you might provide, I guess, a similar service to different councils, but yes, naturally based on their different needs or capacities, whatever it might be, well then it's not practical to provide pricing under that circumstance.
Mike would like to know rough percentage of spend, or if it's easier, a guess as to how much revenue was transacted via the agreement last year. Now, keeping in mind, Mike, this new arrangement is made up of a couple of arrangements, so that may be a little bit hard to guess. I
don't have the specific figure for the last 12 months, but over the life of the BUS 274 and the Smart Cities panel, it's approximately about $100 million in revenue from the panel. But in saying that, I don't think the two panels, I guess, were utilised as much as what they could. And obviously, the more that they were utilised, and I think there is a direct benefit not only for suppliers such as yourselves, but also with Local Buy as well. And moving forward, we will be, as we suggested before, undertaking a number of steps to ensure that there is greater utilisation of this panel. And part of it is improving, the way that it's structured, allowing, people to better identify what they need to make it easier for customers to come to the panel, and also essentially engage suppliers such as yourselves through it.
Dan, Catherine would like to know what happens to NPN 1.18 telecommunications panel.
The telecommunications panel is separate to this, and that will continue under the regime of NPN, or the National Procurement Network. And the current term with that, I believe, is through to 2025 at this stage, with an option to extend.
Michael, there is a perception that BUS 274 arrangements was only used for low value procurement. Is there any guidance on typical contract values?
No, unfortunately, as you can see from the different categories and the different products and services available, yes, there is, some small scale purchases for keyboards or printers or cartridges, whatever it might be. However, at the same time, that their different councils have used it for bespoke, software as a service solutions. So yeah, I guess how it's been utilised is wide and varied, and I think by including the additional categories as well for the local government, specific compliance and enforcement categories will provide the opportunity for suppliers to provide, software as a solution, or potentially have a rather than a one-off purchase, it would be a supplier arrangement for a product or service for a number of years. To use a basic example, with parking compliance and enforcement, most contracts are for 3 to 8 years, and they are of particularly high value. So yes, I think the way that the new panel moving forward is structured, I think there's a lot more opportunities for more valuable contracts to be executed through this agreement.
Steve doesn't receive any queries through local buy, so how can you receive queries? So Steve, please reach out to Audrey, myself, or Dan. There's a number of things in behind there. We need to also look at what email address any of these queries are going to. But long story short, we're here to help. And that's what I would like to sort of tell you, everybody, is if you have a query about anything, we're here on the journey with you. Local Buy is your procurement partner, and we need you to also get best value out of these contracts. Is there a maximum fee or contract value? So ultimately, they are the contract management percentages which are set. So whichever the total value of that revenue is, you are required to pay that contract management percentage. Paul, will existing providers be automatically notified of the new sign-up link? So you should receive an automated email through vendor panel or other platforms to advise you of that.
I've also sent an email out to all current suppliers to the details on vendor panel with an APED link. It's not currently active, and it will be active from 1 August. But that would have been sent out to all the contacts on the your supplier profile on vendor panel.
Dave asks if Indigenous owned organisations, are there sections that highlight their benefits to councils and clients who wish to seek this specific social benefit? There are many councils, Dave, that actually have that Indigenous piece written in onto their procurement policies. In particular, there are a lot of them, but the ones that come to mind are Sunshine Coast and Redlands, where they actually have that written into the procurement policy. So it is very much first and foremost on council radar. I hope that's answered your question. Owen, will you be required to pay the verification fee on the new arrangement if you've been part of BUS 274 for less than a year? Yes, you will. Okay. Sorry, it's just me, funnily enough, on an ICT presentation, myself who's very ICT challenged, trying to work a mouse. Where are we?
The next one was from Wayne saying, just to confirm, the new LB308 will be available on APET on the 1st of August, open for 4 weeks. They go through the process of filling out all requested information, just like they did on BUS 274, and then we go through the same process. Yes, that is correct.
Simon, what and how will software, hardware, and subscription products pricing be evaluated in the pricing schedules?
Essentially, because it is a pre-qualified arrangement as opposed to a standing offer arrangement, where practical and relevant, you're required to provide software, hardware, pricing, and subscription products. And as we alluded to before, there's an opportunity to provide, your catalogue. This pricing is made available to the councils and other customers. So it's more at the point of evaluation. It's where relevant, it's required for you to provide the current pricing for the said software or hardware.
One, your verification fee, if you're not already a current local buy supplier, is $500 ex GST, or if you're a current supplier, $250 ex GST. However, don't forget there are those exemptions if you are a charity, not-for-profit, Indigenous business or small business, which we class as under 2 million turnover per annum or under 20 full-time employees. And thank you, that's a really nice little smiley face.
We've just got one over in the question and answer section. Is the response format similar to the previous tender?
Yes, it will be. I guess one key difference is the structure of the categories that suppliers choose to respond to. But yes, it'll be quite similar. And for those that, remember, responding through the APET tender site, it will be essentially largely consistent with that approach.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, we might...
Actually, there was one question with regard to the criteria. The criteria on the requirements will be clearly articulated in the tender documents that will be released on the 1st of August.
And one last one from Simon, it's just disappearing. Will we be required to provide pricing for manufactured products? This is a huge effort in terms of pricing.
The pricing requirement is so that councils and other customers can identify what products and services that you would be providing through the panel. Yes, I understand that some suppliers have thousands of lines. Essentially, it's providing as comprehensive pricing as is practically possible.
Tony, thank you very much. You're welcome. Yes, there will be a presentation pack sent out. Ian, Audrey's best contact number is 0476 819 963. And a really good tip from Beverly there. Tip for APET 360, put all your answers into a Word document, then copy or paste across so you have a copy of the submission to reuse any items on another panel. Thank you very much for that. Steve, the Microsoft prices expire every month. How do we tackle this in a price schedule?
I would suggest that you put the pricing in at the point of time of you responding, with the caveat articulating this point so that council can clearly identify that the pricing you provided is subject to change as per Microsoft conditions, as in response to your example. There was a question there as well with regard to, yes, this presentation material will be available and also with the recording. So if you wanted to punish yourselves and listen to my dulcet tones again, well then we'll provide a link to the recording as well.
Once again, if you've got any queries, please reach out to the Local Buy team. We're here to help you. We're your procurement partner. Thank you all so much for attending today. Have a wonderful week ahead, and we look forward to seeing your submissions through APET 360 and welcoming you to Local Buy as a valued pre-qualified supplier.